Thank you so much for Dr. Janson Yap to join with us today and to share with us about digital transformation. So let we have some introduction.
Yes, today we would like to introduce our guest, Dr. Janson Yap. He's an expert in cognitive analytic solutions and value-based risk management strategies, the Chief Risk Officer of NUS, a member of advisory board of THP, and an author of the book How Did You Know That? Dr. Janson have had a lot of experience in digital transformations. So today, please join me. Welcome Dr. Janson Yap.
Thank you.
So Dr. Yap, to start with the first questions, would you, with your experience in the regions, would you like to share what do you observe as company going through digital transformations?
We live in a world that is characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complex, and ambiguous, what we would call the VUCA world. And in this very troublesome time, we see that on the screen that we are also in the middle of an industrial revolution, which we now call Industry 4.0, which is characterized by cyber physical systems, the Internet of Things, and the network. The original timeline for this industrial revolution to be in an environment where it is common is around about 2025, but we are actually forced by COVID-19 to adopt a lot of digital transformation 5 years ahead of time. So we actually have been pushed by COVID-19, as you can see, that telecommuting or working from home or using mechanisms like Zoom, like Microsoft meetings, and even in the recent THP project where we moved our enterprise system directly to the cloud, you can see a lot of the work was done through a combination of physical presence in the office, as well as also working from an outside of the office in the cloud environment. So this is really a change of time, and we are in the era of really moving very, very quickly into a digital world complemented by the physical world. So to me, what I see as trends really in the workplace is that there is a mass integration of digital technology into all areas of business, fundamentally changing the way we work and the way we operate, and more importantly, the way we deliver value to customers. Customers' expectation, customers' requirements have not changed whilst the world has changed. And hence, it's very important for companies to have a cultural change. And the more successful companies are the ones that actually have that cultural change, and they need to experiment and get comfortable with failure, whilst at the same time being able to change the way they deliver value to customers. And that is very important.
Yes. Since we have more, can I just remind all the guests that if you have questions, please type in and we will answer for you all of that question later.
Okay. So I think there are 23 what I would call shifts in the workplace, and this is the trend. And as you can see, that many of these trends are already ahead of time. So if you look at storage, for example, storage in terms of the cloud, if you look at robot and services, many restaurants are already using robots for service. You have the wearables like the Internet of Things. You have 3D printing. You have big data. And you also have driverless cars. You have AI. You have the sharing economy like Grab or Uber. You have smart cities. Or you even have big Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain. All these are already, when Industry 4.0 put a timeline against it, many of these timelines have already shifted forward to where we are now in 2021. So from a trend perspective, the digital era has come to stay, and companies really need to get on board, otherwise they'll be left behind. That's the key thing that we are seeing right now.
So you're seeing a fast track of the integrations and the way companies were going to deliver the service and adding values to customer with the help of digital technology.
So
Yes.
what you present give me the urge that is the time that we have to take action. There's no delay, and thanks to COVID, maybe that is a signal that all the company have to change the way they deliver values to customer.
You know, a lot of companies that are interested to do digital transformations. So when you access a company, how do you know the company is ready for digital transformation?
That's a very good question, Ms. Big. I think this is three areas that is very important. Number one, when I look at companies as to whether they are ready for digital transformation, I look at whether there is a cultural change in the organization. I look at whether, for example, whether they have a value proposition for the customer, and whether that value proposition for the customer is sustained and created. That's number one. Number two, whether from their point of view, they know where their high growth market segment is. So for example, I think as we are in the beverage and also in the real estate business, we look for where the high growth areas are in the market segments and to think, how can we take advantage of digital transformation for the high growth markets and the segments? Number three is to make sure that their customers, especially the most powerful customers that they are serving, how do you shape the revenue powerhouse through digital technology?
Yes.
Number four, you look at alliances, new channels of market. Number five, you look for exponential return. Capitalize on if your competitor is only making maybe perhaps 5%, you look for 5 times the 5%, 25% returns. And you look at ways and means to get that exponential return. Number six, the top management team must have what I would call an inside-outside leadership, thinking from the outside and thinking from the inside as to how you would capitalize on this digital transformation. And last but not least is to make sure that you have experts helping you to think through what will be necessary. So that's cultural change I'm looking for in terms of company. Number two is actually looking from an inside perspective, whether in the areas of order to cash, the whole area in terms of processing orders, or sales and marketing, logistics and distribution, and customer service, and look for opportunity to digitally transform that area. You look at your procurement, you look at your R&D, you look at your finance, your manufacturing, your IT, and your HR. And all of these are easy areas whereby you can think about the customer at the center and begin to enable it through a combination of both the digital as well as currently the physical. And in the third area, when I look at companies as to whether they are ready for digital transformation, is whether they are thinking outside the box. Can they think about maybe a digital commerce platform, like what Alibaba has done, Shopee has done? Think about all of the new platforms, the new payment gateways. Think about digital finance investments. Maybe there is the P&L and the balance sheet. Are you investing into the new area of Bitcoin or blockchain? For the beverage industry, think about wellness and think about maybe a THP sports club. maybe think about that area and the fitness centers as maybe part of your new business portfolio. Think about wearables. Think about the digital city. Think about sustainability and green, or even the academy and startups to help you in the ecosystem, or maybe green real estate, or maybe the recycle businesses that already are very much in play. So when I look at the company and think about whether they are ready for digital transformation, I look at what they can do in terms of their culture. And more importantly, I look at whether they have already started the journey of doing good things with the current business and look for exploitations of new businesses that they can actually go into that is not part of their current business.
Yes. That's actually opening up a lot of opportunity for companies that are interested in exploring where can they start. So if you see a company that have a culture ready or potential to utilize the digital transformations, how do you assess if there is a success factor? What is the success factor for company that successfully transforms in their digital transformation journey? Can you share a little bit about that?
I would say this, right? I will look at both the positive and the negative. I think on the positive side, in terms of the key success factors, for a company to really, really be successful, we must come back to customer experience. Really, whatever we do, either in the physical or in the digital, it's about getting their marquee clients, their most important clients, to have that very, very positive customer experience. The ability to please the customer and beyond their expectation. Number two, it's really about operational agility, being able to be responsive and not be behind. You must continue to lead. Thirdly is the culture and the leadership. The leadership must be at the forefront of pushing the boundary in this area. And you must bring your workforce along with you. You must teach them what it means to be digital enabled. And more importantly, is to make sure that you integrate the processes with digital technology and with a good governance structure that must go along with it. But finally, on the negative side, if it's helpful, is you must make sure that it's integrated work and not being siloed in department. So the days of every department only looking at their area and not looking across is over if you want to have digital transformation. You must focus on how to operate and deliver value to customer, to capture that value and not just being great by yourself. You must make sure you look at the how-to of work culture and not the what is of work culture. And finally, if somebody is doing and attempting to change but fail, reward it if there is a genuine attempt. But if it's just saying it for the sake of saying it, forget it, it won't work. I think these are the key success factors for digital transformation.
Thank you for sharing such a comprehensive list of criteria, which I think that a lot of companies sometimes mistaken that digital transformation started with the IT divisions. From what you shared, there's a lot about the customers, a lot about the leadership team, a lot about the mindset where the company is heading. We should work on that before we actually start our digital transformation. So now I have some question from the room.
I think I really like what you mentioned about push the boundaries and actually continue to lead and responsive. That is really, really important. And in THP, we already step up and do have some sharing. So we have our project leader here attending this forum as well. So Mr. Tuấn, do you have any question and any sharing for everybody in the forum today?
Actually, own the his person is my my question already. So I know question so far. However, how we can drive the more to improve more the customer experience in THP to our consumer. So that's it, our ramp in our project.
So, do you have any question before Yap? Any of us have a specific question you can directly ask?
I have a question that recently THP has just changed from SAP, from our infrastructure, traditional infrastructure, and now moving to Amazon Cloud. The systems of ERP have now officially on cloud. Is that a digital transformations from your viewpoint?
Absolutely. I think it's actually the start of a very important journey to move where traditionally you have systems in the premise to using the data and having the data on the cloud and being able to be flexible. You no longer now, like for example, have to invest a lot of money just to protect the data through a very expensive business continuity setup back in here. You can leverage and have the storage well-built facilities either in Hong Kong or in Singapore at no more cost to THP. And that kind of savings on CapEx, you can actually use it to invest in really pleasing your customer. That's an example, right? And so I think in this digital transformation where THP has embarked on, it's a very important first step, but there are many more opportunities for THP to capitalize now and going into really understanding what the data is saying and being able to apply artificial intelligence, machine learning to really be understanding what the consumer trend is so that you can capitalize for the future.
Yes.
When you talk about the strengths of company that would contribute for digital transformations, you talk about moving from silo to more collaborations, and how important is that factors when we are going through a implementations, or most company in Vietnam is going through a starting journey. So silo is normally a norms.
And that's the big part of culture change, and success is not measured by individual department where they are clever and some other department not clever. Cleverness can only come when the whole integration of different involved in a process workflow is successful. And that's why I shared earlier that when we begin to think about processes full of THP, the whole of company to come together to work in an agile manner. And that's absolutely vital. If not, you will always be what the old way is, right? One department raise a particular activity, pass it on to another department, the other department blame the other department, and nothing works. And at the end, who suffer? The customer. So very important is to start from the customer and say, what does he want? What does she want? And how fast does he want? How fast does she want? And the departments coming together to solve the problem together.
Exactly. So I think it's easy to say, but it's really a mindset change, because we start anything from what does customer experience, and even saying the word customer experience, it is difficult for even like a lot of department in the company or in THP, because like they are not the front line and they really just serve for whatever need rather than to experience what the feedback from the customer. So I think I would like to have a question with Miss Bit, the person who is like sponsor and really push, and I have to say that push a lot of boundaries, including myself, to make a lot of change. So to share one thing about the most challenge that you think for digital transformation, what do you share for other business owner?
I think I would say from my experience, being the person who execute a lot of the things that under the guidance of of Dr. Janson's, we see a big trend that people don't really, people are team members, they are very keen, but in actual executions, people are not aware what is collaboration, cross-functional collaboration really means. And that is a key factor that required a leader to be really patient, to be hands-on, patience, mentoring the teams, explaining, repeating themselves hundreds of times about customer experience, and what customers see is the number one important things. How do we help our team members? How do we help in THP, a language of the front lines, to serve the customer better is our number one priorities. And thinking about that is actually required the leader to start first. And I think a lot of what Dr. Janson just shared is the leadership mindset. And in the team, it's really important that people give each other required. I think that that's really important factors.
Thank you. And I think patient is easy to say, but it's not really easy in execution. And a lot of things is create the boundaries is scare. That's I translate directly from Vietnamese sợ. So I'm very scared of whatever, but change is not really easy. So back to Dr. Janson, expert in risk, and how do you see that how people address the risk when they have to start the journey of digital transformation?
I have a rule called the 15% rule. And in some ways, you need some level of critical mass. And so if you take, say, a leadership team of 30 people, then you need about 5 people of the 30 people who must be on the same page in terms of how to do things. And so it's very important that when we bring a team together, we understand the profile of the people. And we want to then mix the people up such that you have 15% or more people who knows how to do this. And then they will then become the catalyst to be able to demonstrate how to do this. So I spent a lot of time with the CIO and talk about how to bring different people together, make sure that they have the skill set and the mindset. And from there, demonstrate how to do this and put in a very strong governance in terms of follow-up and in terms of weekly meetings to ensure that that is done. Because no point talking about it, it is about showing it.
Just watching a live stream.
Secondly, is to make sure that we measure it. We keep measuring every other activity to ensure that it is working. If it's not working, we change. If it's not working, we change. I think that continuous monitoring and with the people involved is the very important aspect of demonstrating how this can be done.
Yes, it's interesting because you address this as change in digital transformation or like in change project, because many people that I have talked to, they find that have weekly meeting is really scary, and sometimes they would like to have freedom just because they really don't want weekly meetings. But yes, as what you share, it is important for monitor, follow up, and engagement. And yes, as I do see that it's important for myself to have any supervisor that keep tracking what is going on, and I know that I'm one page and on the same page with them. Yeah.
I may add is that I think it's good to actually have a THP Academy and make that academy like a very exclusive place, very nice place. Sometimes you can actually live in the academy, just like a hotel or, with good food and beverage, and come together for experience. And once they experience that this kind of academy is proud of, they go home and tell their children, they tell their wife, they tell their husband that I've just been through an academy experience. And this academy experience, the topic could be how to solve customer problem. And I think having that critical mass and you begin to bring this bigger and bigger and bigger, all of a sudden you have an army. And once you have an army, I think change will be a lot easier.
Yes, I completely agree. Talking about solve customer problem is not tomorrow's solution or now solution. It's engagement, it's a solution of full integrated of all departments.
I think that's where when Dr. Janson mentioned about the critical mass of people who think alike, have the right set of skills, and creating the academies would help the team to have the same understanding, the same kind of skill set, the same mindsets, in order for everyone to speak the same language, to giving the collaborations, the execution, and the culture shift. Really what make the difference. It's not just the tool that make the difference in digital transformation. Yeah.
I think there's a question about how do you use COVID-19 as an opportunity for digital transformation. Let me try to address that. I think COVID-19 has forced us to adopt technology as a way to help us survive. And I think this is why I think we have been able to fast track a lot of adoption. There is a Chinese saying that when there is a common enemy, we do better, right? And it's a very interesting thing, right? So COVID-19 is a common enemy. And this common enemy has forced us to work in very, very powerful way, such as if you look at how we now shift our supply chain design to make sure that we are not, I still remember back in March of 2020, where there was a lot of supply that must come from China, for example. And we are forced to relook at suppliers and make sure that you de-risk just the single source from coming from China, just in case the borders are closed. In many ways, I think COVID-19 will ask you to rethink and reimagine and reframe your strategy for your business. And there will be very much a rethinking about what is important for Vietnam from a supply chain perspective, and then from a regional perspective, and then from a global perspective. So in many ways, I think there's a need to rethink and step back and reimagine the future.
So COVID is actually a factor for us to re-examine and explore what is possible for the business.
Absolutely. At the National University of Singapore, we are very mindful that actually Vietnamese students are very clever in Singapore when they come and study in Singapore. We find that actually they are very technically and many of them are very good in computer programming. One of the suggestions I have for THP would be to partner with maybe a good university in Vietnam, either in Hanoi or in Ho Chi Minh, and begin to develop courses, particularly in computer programming or in digital technology, such as RPA, which I think is called a robotic process automation, and begin to think about maybe even in engineering, right? Because THP is a very powerful R&D company developing very, very good products for the market. So as we begin to think about the talent, especially the young talent in THP, the thousands of staff you have, the engineers you have, maybe there's a need to help them to think about computers, data, analytics, process design digitally, and begin to equip them with tools and capability, because I found that actually for the various students, the Vietnamese students in Singapore, they actually excel in that area. And maybe in this COVID-19 environment, maybe partnering with the local universities, especially in this type of engineering digital courses, maybe even digital marketing courses will be very helpful for THP in the future.
Thank you. I think that's very interesting ideas, and I think it's feasible as well.
Yes, we've talked about the culture shift, we've talked about talents, we've talked about the speeding up of technology adoptions, which is the key factors that you've seen as trends for the regions. As I don't know if you would be possible to give us some sharing regarding what have contribute to projects that have failed or companies that try to adopt digital technology in order to transform, but they have not.
So one failure that can come about very quickly is when management decides to stop the project after no results, say 3 months or 6 months. And that's one problem. So what I would call premature closing without understanding the root cause. So management has to be very active in understanding why what is theoretically possible but practically failing. And it's usually the human factor or a leadership factor, and particularly middle management. So it is important to do what I would call a key capability is cause and effect analysis, critical thinking. It's very important. It's missing, and they stop it because they didn't see what was really the problem rather than fixing as a wound, trying to fix the wound rather than understanding what is the real wound, right? So that critical analysis is very important for number one. Number two is beyond that, you need to make sure that the middle managers are buying into what you are saying, because middle management sometimes just say yes, but they don't follow through. So what I mean by middle management, supervisors, very important. The team leads are very important. They must understand their play and their role in making sure that this is successful. I think those two areas are important, and I've seen so many failures because management is too busy. They ask middle managers or they ask supervisors or team leads, and then they just tick the box. That will be a cause of failure.
So basically the first situation is that project have not yet failed, it's just slow adaptations, and management have already decided that it's not working because within the time frames, within the project time frames, it has not yield the kind of result that company was expected. And also the second kind of failure is really contribute to the front line who would be the user, who would be the adopter of the technology, and they don't really have a chance to have the kind of clarity what is expected from them, what is really their role in the project. Wow, that's actually, I see a lot of that happening inside THP, not only in adopting of technology, and it's also adaptations of new procedure, new kind of policy as well. It's very quickly been that it doesn't work, especially with the front lines.
Interesting. We it's one more time. It's about following through, and it seems like it's even more important when we're talking about change or transformation. Thank you so much. So Dr. Janson Yap, I think this is a great sharing, and it's really come from the experience and real experience we go through with many projects that you have been experiencing, and together with THP as well.
Yes.
So I hope that this will be helpful for any business owner or business leaders that